The first time you walk into a building like this, the scale refuses to register. Your eyes search for the far wall and never find it. The ceiling, lost in a dense forest of pipes and ventilation ducts, hangs overhead like a kind of industrial sky, and the light that filters down from it has the soft, sourceless quality of an overcast afternoon. Stand in one place, turn slowly, and you will see 1,000 robots moving at once, each performing its own small, precise motion. Together, in a sequence that has been refined over years, they produce a finished automobile roughly every 40 seconds. There is no music, no applause, only the layered hum of servo motors, the sharp hiss of pneumatic clamps releasing pressure, and the distant metallic heartbeat of a stamping press cycling somewhere out of sight. This is the true sound of modern automobile manufacturing, and it has almost nothing in common with the image most people still carry in their heads. The building in question is one of Tesla's Gigafactories, any one of which, depending on the month and the metric, can briefly claim to be the most productive car plant on Earth. Output figures shift quarter by quarter. What does not shift is the philosophy behind these buildings, a philosophy that over the past decade has quietly redefined what the word factory even means. To understand how a vehicle weighing nearly 2 tons can leave the line every 40 seconds, you have to set aside the old picture of workers in coveralls bolting parts to a chassis as it rolls past, and replace it with something far more sophisticated, a precisely choreographed system of materials science, robotics, software, and supply chain mastery, in which human beings still matter, but in much more specialized roles than they once did. The often quoted figure of 1 car every 40 seconds is a measurement of takt time, a German word borrowed by industrial engineers to describe the rhythm at which finished units emerge from the end of an assembly line. It does not mean that a single car is built in 40 seconds. From the moment its raw aluminum coil is unrolled to the moment it drives off the line under its own power, each vehicle still spends between 18 and 30 hours inside the building. The real achievement is synchronization, the degree to which every station along a kilometers-long path is calibrated to release its work at precisely the right moment. Achieving a sub-minute takt is less a feat of speed than a feat of timing, and it is in that distinction that the real engineering story lies. At the beginning of the line, the body of the car takes shape through a process known as gigacasting. For most of the 20th century, an automobile's structural frame was assembled from somewhere between 70 and 200 separate steel stampings, each pressed individually and then welded together in a sequence that required hundreds of robots and an equally large number of fixtures to hold the parts in alignment. Tesla, beginning around 2020, pursued a different approach. Using injection presses that exert clamping forces in excess of 6,000 tons, the company casts entire sections of the vehicle's underbody, sometimes as large as a small room, as single pieces of aluminum alloy. A rear underbody that once consisted of 70 welded components now emerges from a single machine in about 90 seconds. Fewer parts mean fewer welds, fewer fixtures, fewer robots, and fewer opportunities for variance to accumulate along the line. The trade-off, and there is always a trade-off, is that a casting of that size, if damaged in a collision, may have to be replaced rather than repaired, and the alloys involved require careful thermal management to avoid microfractures during cooling. These are not trivial problems, and the industry continues to debate whether the savings in assembly time justify the complications downstream. From the casting cells, the partially formed body travels by automated guided vehicle, a flat-wheeled platform that navigates the factory floor using a combination of magnetic strips, optical markers, and LiDAR sensors, into the welding and joining areas. Here, the remaining structural pieces are brought into alignment by industrial robots manufactured by companies such as Kuka and Fanuc, machines that have existed in some form since the 1970s, but have grown vastly more precise and faster in their motions. A modern spot weld takes less than a second to execute, and a single robotic arm can perform thousands of them in a shift. The robots themselves do not think in any meaningful sense. They execute programs written by manufacturing engineers, programs that have been tested in simulation for weeks or months before any physical motion occurs. When something goes wrong, and things do go wrong, the line stops, and a small team of technicians is dispatched to diagnose the fault. The battery pack itself deserves its own consideration because it has become the new heart of the car. In a conventional automobile, the most complex subassembly was the internal combustion engine, a device of roughly 2,000 precision machine parts whose tolerances were measured in microns. In an electric vehicle, the engine is replaced by an electric motor of perhaps 200 parts, and the bulk of the manufacturing complexity migrates to the battery. A modern lithium-ion pack contains thousands of individual cells, each of which must be tested, sorted by capacity and internal resistance, glued or welded into modules, and integrated with cooling channels and a battery management system that monitors the temperature and voltage of every cell in real time. The pack assembly takes place in a separate area of the factory, in conditions that more closely resemble a semiconductor cleanroom than a traditional auto plant. Dust is filtered out of the air. Workers wear electrostatic discharge garments. The cells, which arrive from suppliers in Japan, South Korea, or China, or in some cases from Tesla's own cell production lines, are handled with a care that reflects both their cost and their potential to catch fire if mistreated. A finished battery pack represents roughly a third of the vehicle's total material cost, and the rate at which packs can be produced is, more often than not, the true constraint on how many cars the factory can ship. Once the body and the battery converge, the marriage, as it is called in the trade, takes place on a single station where the upper body is lowered onto the lower battery structure and bolted together by a synchronized array of robotic torque drivers. From there, the vehicle moves into the trim and final assembly areas, where it begins to look like something a person might recognize. Seats are installed. Doors, which were removed earlier in the process to give robots and workers access to the interior, are reattached using laser-aligned hinges. Wiring harnesses, perhaps the single most labor-intensive component of any modern car, are routed by hand. This is one of the few stages where human workers remain indispensable, because the flexibility required to route a multi-branched harness through the complex interior of a vehicle has so far resisted automation. Engineers have tried for decades to build robots capable of this task, and have largely concluded that, even now in the middle of this decade, a person with two hands and good training remains the more efficient option. The final stations are devoted to fluids, calibration, and testing. The brake system is filled and bled. The cooling loops for the battery and motor are charged with coolant. The cameras and sensors that enable driver assistance features are calibrated against precisely positioned targets in a darkened bay. The vehicle is then driven, often by an autonomous system, onto a dynamometer where its motors are run through a series of load tests, and finally onto a short closed-loop road test inside the factory grounds. Only after passing every check is the car released to a holding lot, where it waits for transport by truck or rail to a delivery center. The question that naturally arises when one watches this process unfold is how many people are involved in it. The answer depends on how you count. A factory like the one in Shanghai, which produces around 1 million vehicles per year, employs roughly 20,000 workers across all shifts. The plant in Berlin, somewhat smaller, employs around 12,000. The facility in Austin, Texas, larger in physical footprint than any of the others, employs a comparable number. Spread across the entire production process, this works out to roughly 1 human hour of direct labor per 10 to 15 vehicles produced, a ratio that would have been considered impossible a generation ago. The workers are no longer bolting cars together. They monitor screens, intervene when a robot fails, perform the final inspections that no algorithm has yet been trusted to perform alone, and maintain the machines themselves, which break down with a regularity that the marketing materials tend to omit. The cost of all this is considerable. A new Gigafactory of the scale being discussed represents a capital investment of between $5 and $7 billion before a single vehicle has been built. The presses, the robots, the casting machines, the conveyor systems, the paint shop, which is itself a building within a building and accounts for perhaps 15% of the total cost. All of this must be designed, ordered, installed, and tuned over a period of 2 to 3 years. The companies that supply this equipment, names like IDRA, Schuler, Durr, and ABB, are themselves global enterprises whose own factories are scaled to serve the automotive industry. The vehicle that emerges from this system every 40 seconds or so is, in a sense, the visible tip of a much deeper industrial pyramid, one that stretches from the lithium mines of Australia and Chile through the chemical refineries of Asia and into the steel mills and aluminum smelters of half a dozen countries. It is tempting, watching the cadence of the line, to conclude that the problem of building cars has been solved, that the only remaining question is how many factories to build and where to put them. The reality is more cautious. The industry is in the middle of a transition whose end state is not yet known. The shift from internal combustion to electric drive has rewritten the supply chain in ways that no one fully anticipated, and the techniques being pioneered now, gigacasting, structural batteries, unified controllers replacing dozens of separate computers, are still being evaluated under real-world conditions. Vehicles built 5 years ago are only now beginning to reveal what their long-term durability will look like. Recalls have happened. Software updates, delivered over the air to vehicles already in customers' driveways, have corrected problems that in an earlier era would have required physical service campaigns. The factory may produce a car every 40 seconds, but the vehicle it produces is, in important respects, an unfinished product designed to continue evolving in the field. There is also the human dimension behind the machines, which deserves acknowledgement even in a discussion centered on engineering. The workers who staff these facilities operate under conditions that vary considerably by location. Reports from various plants describe long shifts, demanding production targets, and a workplace culture that some employees have praised and others have criticized publicly. Independent journalists and labor researchers have documented both the high wages relative to local norms and the physical toll of the work, particularly in roles that involve repetitive motion or exposure to heat from welding and casting operations. None of this is unique to one company. The history of automobile manufacturing is, in part, a history of negotiation between the demands of production and the limits of human endurance, and the current generation of factories is the latest chapter in that ongoing conversation rather than a resolution of it. What, then, is the meaning of a car built every 40 seconds? It is not, in the end, a story about speed for its own sake. It is a story about convergence, about how dozens of separate technical disciplines, casting, robotics, battery chemistry, software engineering, logistics, materials science, have been brought together and the friction between them patiently eliminated at every joint where they meet. The minute itself is almost incidental. It could just as easily be 90 seconds or 45, depending on which line and which model and which day you happen to measure. What matters is that an artifact as complex as an automobile, with its tens of thousands of parts and its requirement to operate safely at highway speeds for a decade or more, can now be produced at a cadence that would have seemed inconceivable to the engineers of even the recent past. Whether this represents progress in the fullest sense is a question the factory itself cannot answer. The building is silent on the question of what should be built, or for whom, or at what environmental cost. It is an instrument, extraordinarily refined, capable of producing whatever its operators direct it to produce. The people who designed it, and the people who run it, and the people who buy what it makes, are the ones who will determine, over the coming years, whether the speed of production translates into something more lasting than a number on a quarterly report. The robots will continue their motions regardless. The presses will continue to cycle. And every 40 seconds or so, somewhere on the floor of a building so vast you cannot see its far wall, another silent car will roll off the end of the line, perfectly formed, indistinguishable from the one before it, and waiting, like all manufactured things, for the world outside to decide what it is worth.